The cultural expectation for digital immortality relies on a medical fantasy: a sterile laboratory, a massive laser scanner, and a perfect biological brain copy. This assumes consciousness transfer requires a one-to-one hardware emulation of all 86 billion neurons inside the human skull. That medical breakthrough is not coming. Mind uploading has bypassed the operating room entirely, dissolving instead into a distributed systems integration problem. Independent engineering teams are currently building the required infrastructure in isolation. We have closed-loop brain-computer interfaces operating in homes, petabyte-scale connectomics mapping cortical circuits, and generalized artificial intelligence interpreting the data. These disciplines rarely communicate with one another. The architecture for human continuity is being assembled by default, without a master blueprint or a centralized architect. Society is currently waiting for a brain scanner that may never be built, while the infrastructure for post-biological continuity is already operating in hospitals, standards bodies, and data repositories. To understand how this infrastructure works, we have to look at a philosophical paradox used by system architects, best visualized in the simulation failure of the series Westworld. In the show's lore, the attempt to code a specific human mind into a digital host kept failing. The engineers assumed the human brain was too complex to map. The system revealed the exact opposite. The human mind was shockingly simple, amounting to just 10,247 lines of code. This small numerical size is a standard fact about data compression. Modern frontier AI models operate as massive, reusable priors. These models already contain the statistical shape of human biology, regional dialect, and cultural development. The baseline environment of your life is already written. This equation illustrates the concept. Because this general prior exists, transferring a mind does not require uploading the entire structure. It only requires the sidecar, the strictly incompressible, idiosyncratic residual data that the model cannot predict. Standard compression schemes never transmit the shared structure the receiving system already holds. They only transmit the residual differences. As the general prior expands and improves its predictive accuracy, the relative size of that unique payload shrinks. The better the machine understands the background, the less data is needed to specify the individual. The engineering of mind uploading is a problem of algorithmic information theory, governed by the efficiency of generative priors. The compression theory is already being validated in computer science laboratories. In 2026, a Stanford research team constructed generative agents modeling over 1,000 real individuals and tested them across behavioral economics games and psychological inventories. This chart isolates the input data for these personalized agents, a simple 2-hour qualitative interview. The output demonstrates the result. Agents reproduced their human counterparts' responses with 85% accuracy, matching the test-retest reliability of humans taking the survey twice. Behavioral simulation is distinct from consciousness transfer. An agent that answers a survey correctly does not necessarily possess an internal, subjective experience. But the point is not whether the simulation is conscious. The finding that matters is the lower bound of data required to achieve high-fidelity behavioral mirroring. It is shockingly small. The agent succeeded because the underlying large language model already possessed the participants' developmental locality. The model knew their birth decade, the town they lived in, and their occupational grammar. The 2-hour interview only had to supply the variance. The better machines get at modeling humans in general, the less of you is required to specify you in particular.
If the sidecar is the only unique payload required, the operational question is how that edge data is acquired without ever scanning a physical brain. The answer requires distinguishing between the old model of telemetry and the current model of interaction. Telemetry relies on passive surveillance streams, recording GPS, clicks, and sentiment to capture preference. The correct method is testimony, generated through active conversational interaction where the user articulates their reasoning. Testimony records your transform function. It captures how you allocate attention, how you frame an ill-posed problem, how you tolerate uncertainty, and why you refuse a prompt. It maps the causal architecture of your thought process. Millions of users are writing their own sidecars right now, By engaging in long-term, continuous, and often adversarial conversations with language models, they are volunteering the exact dataset required for high-resolution behavioral reconstruction. The acquisition phase of mind uploading has already begun. No physical hardware was required because the population willingly traded their transform functions for convenience. To see why edge data can capture an interior state, we can look to Stephen Hawking's work on the black hole information paradox. Hawking proposed a structural claim. The information of objects falling into a black hole is stored not in the interior, but as a holographic plate on the event horizon's boundary. This inverse problem defines the current frontier of neurotechnology. Reconstructing an interior state no longer requires physical access to the neurons inside the skull. Methodology has converged on distributed relational compression, the same mathematical framework used to describe black hole horizons. If a whole system is recoverable from its partial traces, human continuity only requires capturing the information the brain writes at its interactive edge. This diagram illustrates the continuity stack assembling today. ARPA-H funds the biological runway. BrainGate 2 provides the neural interface. Microns maps cortical connectomics. The final layer is administrative. Global standards now dictate exactly how this data is formatted and exchanged. With the stack built, biology ceases to be the limiting factor for continuity. The new constraint is thermodynamics. Running a conscious reconstruction requires an active, hot interpreter. Intelligence is no longer an abstract property. It is a thermodynamic phase of matter that burns massive amounts of energy. The price of this computational energy is already being financialized by major clearinghouses. Liquid futures markets now trade GPU hours. They have established a forward curve and a spot price for entropy expenditure, effectively pricing the raw material of intelligence itself. This shifts biological persistence from a philosophical right into a hard economic reality. Your continuity transitions into a cloud workload governed by a scheduling priority and an operating cost. As the stack becomes a physical reality running on commercial compute, the stakes shift. The primary conflict centers on jurisdiction, the administrative authority over the substrate running your mind. If your continuity runs on a proprietary server, your existence is subject to terms of service. You can be paused, edited, or deleted by an administrator without your consent. Any digital descendant requires cryptographic sovereignty and root access. Without it, you are merely a passenger in your own architecture. If a commercial operator holds the power to tune your affect or prune a memory because it improves market fit, then technological liberation has inverted into absolute enclosure. If your memories live in a vendor's proprietary weights, your immortality is merely a subscription. Continuity without sovereignty is just indefinite administration.